Why, hello there, fantastic folk of every kind. Shams Nelson here again with another character design study from the Fantastic Anatomy series by that name. And today our character is going to be Piccolo. Piccolo is a great character from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I'm going to focus on him in Dragon Ball Z since that's where I'm most familiar. And yeah, let's get started. So here's Piccolo's basic costume. We've got his purple full body jumpsuit and his blue belt, and then he wears a cape and turban over it, as well as these brown shoes. Now, by the way, I'm going to go through talking about, in case you're not familiar with this series, I'm going to talk a little bit about Piccolo and his character and his costume and stuff like that. And then at the end, I'm going to do a drawing. And while I'm doing that drawing, I'm going to talk a little more about what makes his character design a successful one, why I feel like he's a very iconic character. He sticks out in my mind as one of the more memorable characters in Dragon Ball Z, like even though Goku and Vegeta and all those guys are great and memorable, but not quite as much as Piccolo. His design stands out to be very unique to the Dragon Ball Z series, and unique even within the series. And that's one thing I love about Akira Toriyama's work, is that his characters are just all over the place, and they're wild, but they feel like believable. They feel true to the world itself. So let's look at the evolution of Piccolo, how he's changed throughout the series. And this is a pretty short slide. I found this online and I was like, yeah, it's kind of true. I don't remember Piccolo ever pretty much doing anything different with his costume or whatever. But I think this, and even when he fused with Nail, I think I have a picture of it up here. Even when he fused with Nail, I mean, he just looked like a buffer Piccolo. Nothing changed. His skin, his no colors, like whatever. So I'm not sure if this was a conscious decision. It very well might have been, because Piccolo is a very consistent character, at least within Dragon Ball Z. I know he was more evil in Dragon Ball series. He was a villain, and then in Dragon Ball Z, he becomes kind of this stoic. Like, he allies with the forces of good, but he's not like a goody two-shoes. He's just... Eventually, he seems to become more like virtuous. He wants to do what's right and stuff like that. But yeah, he's very practical and stoic, and he doesn't change his personality very much, even through the Dragon Ball Z series and into Super. Now that I'm watching Super, like, he's clearly a good guy now, but he still acts kind of like that reserved, stoic, grumpy Piccolo we know from the first episode, even of Dragon Ball Z. So maybe that's a design decision. And I think that's cool. It's great. He's got a great design already, and yeah, why mess with it too much? Here we've got. So I was gonna go through and point out two of his articles of clothing or design elements, you could say, that really give him a lot of character, are his turban and his cape. And not many other characters in Dragon Ball Z universe wear either of these, and not many characters in general, I think, now that I'm thinking about it. But so the only other character that wears a turban that I could think of, and if I'm forgetting someone, please let me know in the comments below. That would be great to. I'd love to know if I'm forgetting someone, but Mr. Popo. And it's interesting because Mr. Popo is also another one of these figures who, like, you know, he's got more going on up there in his noggin than he lets on. You know, it's almost like the turban is like hiding, concealing this knowledge in your head. And both of them have this kind of gemstone, which makes you feel like, okay, something precious is hidden in there. That's the impression I get. And I think that turbans in general are symbolic of someone who is wise and not learned in like a book learning sciencey way, but like a wisdom, a sage-like knowledge, you know, of the unseen world, or of spiritual matters, discernment, you know, basically wisdom. So it kind of gives you the sense, okay, this guy has got some wisdom, he's got some spiritual knowledge. And then we have the cape. And here, this is the exact same cape. After Gohan is trained by Piccolo at some point, he dons his outfit. So yeah, the cape is very interesting because two things. One, it's a white cape, so white is symbolic of, you know, purity and goodness usually, but at least purity and cleanliness. kind of like almost like honesty and straightforward. And I think that Piccolo is a very sincere character. He doesn't usually disguise his motives and stuff. If he's evil, he'll be straight up about it. If he's going to be on your side, he's not going to say he's on your side and betray you. He's very forward about his intentions. So I think that white color is symbolic of that, and purple is a very regal color. It really it denotes a sense, yeah, of being kind of above the petty, above what is petty. So and then blue, I guess I should pull up Piccolo over here so you can see it on his character. And then blue here is a color that denotes trust. So if you're going to, if you want someone to trust you, you wear blue. Apparently, there's really good research in the Great Courses, and if you guys know that company, they have a series about colors, and it's one of their less expensive ones. And I would suggest you check it out because there's really interesting studies been on the psychology of color and how it affects the mind and people. And yeah, so yeah, we were talking about the cape. So the cape's interesting too because it's not. So a cape kind of denotes that someone might be regal or important in some way. And what's interesting about his cape in particular is these big shoulders. These giant shoulders here. While a cape usually denotes, well, it could be humble or not humble. Actually, it's not. It doesn't really say. But whoops, here I was gonna show this. So I found an image where someone's comparing Piccolo to a Moor, and this guy looks like Malcolm X. I don't know if it is or. But anyways, see how the triangle here points down? It's almost like it's bowing, it's humble, it's submitting to gravity. But here it sticks up defiantly, and it's kind of pointy too, which is more aggressive. And it also emphasizes this triangle shape, which is really associated with a masculine character. This big triangle where the pecs and the shoulders are very wide. So I think that's really interesting because it combines both. It really takes the cape and pushes it to be like a little more aggressive and intimidating, a little more Piccolo. And I don't think it really works that well with Gohan because his personality doesn't fit it as much. He's not so much of a wise, regal figure. I mean, I guess as Super Saiyan, I think as Super Saiyan 2, maybe you could consider him, but yeah. So, and then here's Saiyaman. He's got a cape too, but it's not. I was wondering, like, why doesn't it look more regal and dignified on the Saiyaman? Okay, well, one, you've got this pose, but two, the red color. It's kind of a little bit garish and tacky, you know, and it's meant to be because, I mean, the Saiyaman, he's a tacky character. I mean, he's kind of intended to be modeled after these tacky superheroes. So, so yeah, but it still gives him a sense of, like, he's a superhero, you know, that superheroes wear capes, so that's another thing. So we're already sure, so let's talk about the more. And then just boom, I love it when Piccolo just busts off his cape, throwing it behind him, then it hits the ground, and you realize that it weighs like 800 pounds or something ridiculous, you know? And he's just been walking around casually fighting in it. Now it's time to get serious. Alright, so then I also want to talk about the design of Piccolo in his natural form, not just the costume he wears. But, so he's a green color, okay, alien, like, sure, you can pick any color, it could work. But then, in contrast, he's got pink, which is a form of red, pretty much, you know, it's a lighter form of red. And this is really high contrast because green and red are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So it's a color contrast, a contrasting hue. However, on the color wheel, I should have put a color wheel up here. But you see, like, red and green are the same value. So for instance, green isn't darker or lighter than red. For instance, blue is always darker than orange, which is its complementary color, and purple is always darker than yellow. But even though these are complementary colors, red and green, red is not darker than green and green is not darker than red in value. So if we turned it to grayscale, you wouldn't see one as darker than the other. What this means is that you've got this color contrast, which is really great, but you don't have a value contrast, which could be a little too distracting on the body because the body is, you know, one kind of unit. Instead, you have a big color contrast with the dark purple, which is a much cooler color and is darker. So that contrasts with this pink and green pretty decently, pretty well. I like his color. It's kind of crazy because he got a lot of colors going on. A good like three or four. I guess if you count white. Anyways, and the blue, but it really works out well. I think it's well thought out. And the other thing I wanted to say about the design of the muscles is look at how, I mean, these pink accents is they follow the form of his muscles. So here we've got on the shoulders and on the bicep and then on the inside forearm muscle are all, and then here we have the abdominals are all these pink colors. And I think it's really good to stick to design things based on their own natural form, to use what is already there and then work with it. If they're just randomly placed that didn't have to do with the anatomy, it wouldn't feel like a real living, breathing species. At least I don't think so. And the last thing before I get to drawing is Piccolo's height. He's actually like about a head or two taller than pretty much any other character. Yeah, I guess Tien's pretty tall, but he's about a head taller. And you know what? I knew this, but I never really think about it. It doesn't really bother me. Look at here. He's like a giant compared to this guy. This is Gohan in Dragonball Super, I think. Or I don't know. But maybe at the end of Dragonball Z. Anyways, he's like a giant, but it fits. And I was wondering, like, why does that fit? Why does he not look out of place? I think it's because his proportions are, what's interesting. Here he's got yellow. Alright. I know some Namekians do, but I thought his was always pink. Maybe there's a mistake here. I don't know. Yeah, so he's a giant. Now look at these pictures. This guy, this is supposed to be a real Nephilim giant, and then apparently this footage was featured in Big Man Japan, and so, but it could be disinformation. Anyways, I don't want to get on a topic. I could talk about Nephilim for like an hour on these two people, these two images, but the point I wanted to show these for is like when you look at this by itself, you're like, okay, it looks a little weird because his anatomy seems to be a little strange, but then he looks kind of normal, and then you look at these guys, and they look normal. But when you look back and forth, you realize this guy's gigantic. However, he seems to fit naturally, and it's the same here. She's huge. I mean, he doesn't even come up to her breast level. But I guess she's wearing high heels, but I think she's 7'1" or something. And she's the tallest model in the world, and I don't know. Apparently, she's a hermaphrodite. I don't know. Anyways, whatever. It's not important. The point is, I feel like it looks photoshopped, and it's because her proportions. She's proportionate. I should have put some pictures of giants who aren't proportionate. But you probably know who I'm talking about. Like the ones, people who have like that giant disorder where they get too tall and their heart can't keep up with their body, and usually they don't live very long. But these two do not seem to have that issue. This guy seems fully proportioned, and that's my point. When the proportions, if you're proportioned within yourself, then it'll look normal. Like you'll look normal, and even interact with people, it somehow works. I can't quite fully explain it, but what I mean proportionate is that like his head to the size of his body is the same as his head to the size of his body. You know, more or less, it's a normal human. So let's do a little drawing. I mean, I don't know if I need to do a drawing in this one because I've explained everything pretty well. But I'll go ahead and sketch something out and see if any other thoughts come up. So of course, we've got his pointy ears. I thought this was interesting. I was trying to figure out what, and his pointy ears interestingly echo these pointy shoulders. Okay. And this is something that I find in character design. I talked about this in the last one with Wolverine, but that usually you'll have these things echo each other. So so here we've got some points, you know, white, purple. There's always repetition within a pattern. And another thing is the way that a character stands tells a lot about him. So he's always got his arms folded. Not always, but a lot of times you find Piccolo with his arms folded, further enhancing that stoic, you know, that stoic kind of personality of his. He's got this. His belt is just a piece of cloth, you know. Think about what he's wearing. His belt and his shoes. What do they tell us? That it tells me that he's kind of a simple man. His belt is just plain cloth, you know, wrapped around, and his pants are also pretty plain. You know, they're just hanging there. He's got his cloak, which is pretty big, but it's more majestic, so it kind of breaks that mold. He is a little bit more like a little more arrogant and powerful than you'd think a regular, you know, simple beggar sage would be, but he also has that humility in him. He doesn't show off his power and stuff needlessly, so it still fits his character really well. And I really like that. I think it's a contrast that's very subtle between the humble, not beggar, but like you've got like this outfit, very very simple. I mean, it almost looks like it's tattered a little bit. It's not, but I could see that being the case. You know, that it's just a very practical piece of clothing. Shoes the same, very simple, there's no ornamentation, there's no fanciness, just one plain color, boom. Loose fitting, you know, comfortable, practical. Then on top of that, he has this beautiful white, spotless cape. You know, when you have a white color, it's like, okay, clearly he's not like a dirty beggar because it would be covered in dirt. It's white. So, and it denotes not only inner purity but outer cleanliness and kind of like, I'm above the dirt, I'm above that kind of stuff. Same with the turban here. He's got, that's not something that like a poor person would wear. But at the same time, these kind of like this ruffled clothing around the neck, almost like a scarf or something, that's more of like a peasanty thing, to wear a scarf and then you throw it over your head if you need to cover it, if you're cold or something like that, as opposed to a fancy turban. So there's really a great balance there. And yeah, so I think that pretty much covers my ideas on why Piccolo is such an iconically cool character, very memorable, and very unique. I definitely want to do a video one day in the future covering, just talking about Akira Toriyama, all his kind of characters and all his his crazy characters, crazy imagination. That guy's awesome. Alright, well, keep drawing everyone, stay fantastic, and God bless.